In this video series, we are going to begin with the JavaScript. JavaScript is basically a scripting language which can be embedded in a HTML page. HTML page simply means any web page which is running on World Wide Web. Once you embed the JavaScript in the page, you can provide the various functionalities to that particular web page, such as you can put some validations, you can make the page even more interactive, you can put some animation kind of things. So that is all we can do using the JavaScript. So make sure before getting started with the JavaScript, you have the sufficient knowledge of HTML and CSS, as we will be working with the web page, and these two are the important things which you must know for creating the interactive web page. Now here, as I just said, it's a scripting language, but if I'll add something more, I will say it is a client-side scripting language. Client-side means whenever you will execute the JavaScript on a web page, the complete execution will happen on the client side only. There will be no server-side interaction while executing the JavaScript. That's why whenever we'll try to do some operations like putting the validations or doing the animation like things, everything will execute on the client side, which will also efficiently execute the page, means the performance of the page will be more better. Now something more about JavaScript, let's see. It is untyped. Untyped means, if we know something about the programming languages, you may know about the thing called data types, which specifies the type of data we are going to process. But while working with JavaScript, you will observe like it is untyped, means it is not a type safe language. So whenever you will have to store something, you will just use a variant type, and that type can store any type of value. So we will have to take care like which type of data we are going to manipulate manually. Apart from that, it is multi-paradigm, means you can do various kinds of development, website development things related to JavaScripts. Nowadays, JavaScript is also a backbone of so many different technologies like jQuery, AngularJS, Node.js, and so many JS-like technology you may be hearing nowadays. It is functional, which will make the code even more modular. You can split the particular code in the different functions, and you can call them up on a particular event, as it is also event driven. So using JavaScript in such a way will make it wonderful, and so that we can use it even more creatively. It is interpreted by browser's JavaScript engine. Now, if the question comes like, when I write a simple HTML, how it runs? Every browser has a parser which reads the HTML tags and render the text accordingly. For example, if I use h1 tag, so the text written within the h1 would be shown as the h1, as a heading 1, the biggest heading. But if I say, what about JavaScript? Means if I am writing some logical code, some programming like code, how the browser will be able to execute that? So for that, as it is mentioned, every browser has the JavaScript engine. For example, for Chrome, it is V8 engine. For different browsers, it's different engine. So that JavaScript engine is actually able enough to execute the code which is written in the JavaScript. And make sure while doing this, your JavaScript must be enabled for that particular browser. Only then you will be able to see the execution of your JavaScript code. Now let's move on to some more advantages of JavaScript, as it is less server interaction. Alright, means while executing, it will execute mostly on the client side, so it will be a lesser interaction with the server, and that will make the performance better. Alright, because if the code is here only and it is running on the client side, the page will not be posted back to the server again and again, and that will definitely enhance the performance of your web page. Richer interface. As in jQuery, we internally use some of the functions of JavaScript which makes the interface even more better. So you can say like it will give you a richer interface through animations or through some dynamic CSS kind of things, which will make it even more attractive and the client will feel like good while working with the web pages. Increased interactivity, that's what it means. All right, when you will create a rich interface, a more interactive interface, it will be good for the client and it will keep on coming to you. So these are some key features of JavaScript. From our next video onwards, we will start with the implementation of it. In this video of JavaScript, we are going to cover arrays. In computer science, array is basically a data structure which allows us to store multiple values in a single variable. Yes, earlier we have read that it is not possible, but the way to do this thing is actually a bit different. Here, when we will define such variable, that variable will actually behave like a collection. And in that particular collection, there will be a number of memory blocks would be defined. How many memory blocks? That we will define while defining the arrays. That means when we will define the array, along with the definition, we will specify the number of blocks which we want, and after that we can start storing the value in each of those element blocks. And since, as you can see, it stores a fixed size sequential collection of elements, that means it is a fixed size. The size which you will specify by the time of creating the array, later you will not be able to change that. And if you will try to store values more than that, your program may get terminated abnormally. So make sure while defining the array, you are specifying a handsome amount of size which will not cause any overflowing. Now you have defined the elements, number of elements of an array, and after that you can start storing the values into that. Whenever you want to access a specific element block from that list of array blocks, you have to pass the index, as whenever you create an array, the index of each memory series starts with a 0 to 1, 2, 3 and so on. For example, if I have defined an array of size 5, then the lower index will start with 0, then 1, 2, 3 and 4. So whenever I want to retrieve or assign the value, I have to pass the index like that. So here you can see there are a couple of syntaxes about writing the data, how we can start writing the data or elements in an array. So here what I have done, I have taken a var fruits. Fruits is the name of my array, is equal to new array. Alright, this new is a keyword to allocate a new and fresh memory space, and into that you can pass the elements like apple, orange, mango. So it is sequential storage. Here I have not specified the size. You can also do that, like you can say new array 5 and then later you can assign the values. Here I directly stored the value, so the first element will get stored in the index 0, then 1 and 2, and very similarly I have done here as well. So both are the valid syntaxes if I talk about JavaScript. Once you have defined the array, and after that if you want to retrieve the elements in separately, alright, so what you can do, fruits like the name of the array, and then in the square brackets you can pass the index. As I said earlier, index will start with 0. So when you will say fruit 0, so it will give you apple, fruits 1 will give you orange, and fruits 2 will give you mango. So let's see practically now how we can start implementing the concept of arrays. So now in this implementation of arrays, as you can see, first of all I have defined the array of length 5 and I have used new keyword for allocating a new and fresh space for this particular array. The size of the array is 5, that means it will create 5 separate element blocks in which you can put a specific value. And to point out those particular blocks, we can pass the index. So like here you can see the index is starting from the 0, then 1, 2, 3 and 4. So in this particular index you can assign any type of value. As JavaScript is not a type safe language, you can put any type of value, but when we talk about array, basically it is the collection. So we generally make a collection of similar type. Here I have put the value of same types, and now to read that particular array, what I can do is I have just written a loop which will start from the 0 till the less than 5, that means 4. And obviously it will run, this loop will run from 0 to 4, and at every time I am running this, I am reading the ith index, which is changing from 0 to 4. So and every time I am printing the value, I am breaking the line as well. So let's see how this particular output will be looking like. So as expected, here the value from 10 to 50 is being printed. You can also do the inline initialization for the array, as here you can see right after the new array I have not passed the size, but I have used the curly braces to initialize all the values. So here I have passed 5 values. So array is always having a static memory allocation. Any particular number of values which you will pass here, that will be the size of the array. For example, if I'll pass the 6th element, now the length of the array is 6. So let's execute it till the 5th index. If it is 6, length is 6, the last index would be 5. Alright, so let's refresh this one, and here you can see the output. So as we have discussed these particular syntaxes in the description also, like there are various ways of initializing an array, and anytime you want to read, you can simply pass the index after that and you can retrieve the value. When we have a number of elements all together, sorting and searching are the two very important tasks that we need to do. If we have a number of elements stored in an array and I want to sort them in a particular order, that is either ascending or descending order, I can go for the sorting concepts. And here I have written a very simple program of bubble sort in which I am sorting an array in ascending order of length 6. So here in the very first line you can see I have assigned some values in an array like 7, 2, 8, 1, 3, 4. It's random values I have put inside this, and now I want to sort it out. So before sorting, I have just printed the value right here like this before sort, and if, as you know, it's a 6 number of elements are there, so 0 to 5 this loop is running, and I'll print each and every value out there. Now as soon as I printed, I'll start doing the bubble sort. So for any successful bubble sort, I need to run a loop for n into n minus 1 times. So that is what I have done here. Like here it's n is the length of the array, that is 6. So this loop is running for the 6 times, inner loop is running for the 5 times, so overall it will be running at the 30 times. So that is the maximum number of cycles that we have to execute for a successful bubble sort. So let's see what I have done inside this particular loop. So here you can see like j is started from 0 and obviously it is less than 5. So when the first time this loop would be running, the value of j is 0 and j plus 1 is of course 1. So if the value of the earlier value, if the earlier value is greater than the later value, for example j is 0 and 1, so if ARR 0 is greater than ARR 1, of course in this particular case 7 is greater than 2. So what I want is I'll have to swap these two values so that 2 will come before the 7. Alright, that will not make it a complete sort, but of course the two values would be sorted because it is the ascending order, so any smaller value have to come before the greater value. So that is what I have done inside this. Like these 3 lines are simply swapping the values of the 0th and 1th index. So the index or the value of 1th index will be here in the 0th index, and the 7 which is at 0th index will come to the 1st index. So similarly this loop will go for this 5 times, means 0 to 4 index would be covered. And of course, as you can see here in the logic, I am putting j plus 1. So the last index is 5. When j is 4, so what it will be saying, if ARR4 is greater than ARR5, that means these two values will be compared, and if required the swapping will take place, but only in one cycle. The complete sorting will not be done. So to iterate this particular concept again and again, I have placed it inside this another loop, and it will make it show like in 30 cycles this loop will be sorted completely, and after that I have printed the loop again in the very same way I have done it earlier. So let's execute, and here you can see the output. Like initially it was like 7 2 8 1 3 4, and later it's 1 2 3 4 7 8. Alright, if you want to sort it to the descending order, you can simply replace the greater than symbol to the less than. Now the swapping will be done when the smaller value is before the larger value. So now you can see this whole array is being converted into the descending order sorted. In this video of JavaScript, we will begin with the variables. As in the programming and even in the scripting of JavaScript, variables are something which can store a single value at a time temporarily. Temporarily means the value can be changed later during the execution if required. As earlier we have already discussed in the features of JavaScript, like it is not a type safe language, so whenever you will be defining any variable, it will not be having any specific data type. So we will use a var, that is variant keyword, whenever we will go for any variable declaration, and after that we can assign any type of value. But since we want to be logical, we will not try to do so and will stick to a single data type of value. Now whenever you will start working with the variables, they would be having two scopes, either local or global, but practically we will do that as soon as we will start working with the functions. So if any variable is defined inside a function, that is a local variable, and if you define any variable out of the functions, it will be a global variable, means it can be accessed inside any functions you are making. But initially it is nothing like that, because we are not going to implement any functions. So let's see practically how can we start working with the variables in JavaScript. So now in order to declare the variable, here we will use the var keyword, and after that you will name the identifier. So like here, if I want to store some name, I will name the variable, that is the name, and then if you want you can assign the value right here, or you can do it later. So if I want to assign the value, what I'll do, I'll put a double quotes, since here I want to store the string type of data. As we already discussed that JavaScript is not a type safe language, it is loosely typed language, so you don't have to specify a specific data type right here. Just by specifying the var keyword, you can define a variable, and after that you can assign any type of value into it. Let's say here I assign a value. Similarly, if I want to assign some other things like age, which is a numeric value, I can do that as well. And similarly, you can assign any type of value like the same. For example, if you want to assign some decimal numbers also, you can do that in the very same way, like this. And similarly, whenever you want to print the data, you will use the same method, that is document.write, which we have already used, either document.write or document.writeln. So make sure that whenever you are printing the value of an identifier, you will not put them in the quotation, and you will keep them like this. But if you want to put anything before that, you can simply put it in double quotes like name, and then a concatenation symbol, that is the plus. So let's save this one and see the output in the browser. So as here you can see, similarly if I want to do some more things, I can do that in a very simple way.
If I will run this, you will see all the things in the same line like this. But if you want to break the line, as we know, we use the BR in the HTML. So I will simply concatenate that right after each message like this. And again in age, and if I'll do anything after salary, so that will again come in the next line. So now this is the output we were looking for. So similarly like this, you can start creating the variables and can assign the values as per your requirement.
So far in the JavaScript, whichever code we have written having a linear execution, means from the line 1 to the last line it kept on executing. But if I want to execute few things on a particular condition only, I can go for the conditional statements, as these condition statements will first compare the conditions using the variables and the operators which we have already covered, and if the condition is satisfied, then it will do the particular task. So here in JavaScript we have a couple of conditional statements such as the if else and switch, where if else will be used by in JavaScript code like if, after then we can specify a condition, and if the condition is not satisfied we can pass the else statement. And secondly, we have a switch statement which will be doing a short circuiting like thing, means a direct execution as soon as the condition is matched. But in this video only we will just cover the introduction of it. In our next video onwards we will start with the implementation of if and switch statement separately. Now in the conditional statements, let's talk about the if else statement. As I already discussed in the previous video, it is used to pass some conditions, that is, after the if keyword I can pass any condition using the logical or comparison operator, and if the condition is not satisfied then we can go for the else. But else is optional, so you are not forced to add the else keyword right after the if. So this is how the execution will take place. Like when the code flow will be happening, there will be a condition carried by the if keyword. If the condition is true, then only we will execute the conditional code. If it is false, we will terminate that particular code, means that particular code will not get executed. You can also change the multiple conditions using the else if, means if the first condition is false, you can proceed with the second condition, and the second condition will with else if will only be compared when the first condition is false. So let's see practically how can we implement this else if and if statements all together.
So here we are implementing the if statement. What we are doing here is we will be taking the marks of any three subjects from a student, and after that I'll sum them up and will calculate the percentage. On the basis of the percentage, I will assign them a grade, like whether it's grade A, B, C or D. So what I'm doing here is using the prompt box, I'm taking all the three marks. Now whenever you will enter something in the prompt box, it will be treated as the string. So here whenever you will use the plus operator for adding the things, it will actually be concatenated and you will not get the desired result. So in order to make them treated like the integer, what I have done is I have used the method called or function called parse int. So in this parse int, what it will do, it will convert the type to the integer. So now when I will add this when I will use this plus symbol, it will actually add them rather than concatenating. So once I get the total, I have applied a very simple formula for calculating the percentage, and here I am considering the maximum marks as 50. So whatever the percentage is there, I will print that, and after that on the basis of that percentage I will pass the conditions in order to get the grades. Now here you can see it is if, and right after this it's a parenthesis inside which I will pass a statement which will return a boolean value. So here I am using this comparison operator, and we have already discussed about it, like whenever you will be using the comparison operator, it will return you a boolean. So if this particular condition is true, I will get an alert box with the thing grade A. Now if this condition is incorrect, so it actually depends what you have written after that. For example, if I don't have these line of codes, so if the percentage is not greater than 80, nothing is going to happen. If it is greater than or equal to 80, I will get a message grade A. But it's all depends on the situation and your requirement, like what and how you want to do in a condition. Means if this condition is incorrect and I don't want to do anything in the condition, when the condition is incorrect, so I will leave the program like that. But if I want to do something, if this condition is incorrect, or if I want to check some more conditions, if this condition is false, then I can go for all these things. Like here you can see it is not a if, but it is else if. Means this condition will be checked only when the previous condition is false. If this is true, this will never be compared. Similarly, if this condition is returning true, then we will not go to all these statements. This condition will only be checked when this will return a false, and so on. And similarly, when all the conditions are false, only then the control will come in the else part. So this is a chaining thing, right? You can see whenever I'm using the else if, that means each and every condition is changed, and it will come, the control will come inside them only when the previous conditions are false. So for example, if I have entered something and the percentage is having 85, so 85 is greater than 80, 85 is greater than 60 also, 85 is greater than 40 also. But as I said, if this particular condition is true, the control will never come in these conditions. So doesn't matter whether they will return true or false, nothing is going to happen. So let's save the program and see the output in the browser. So let's refresh this. Here I'll enter the marks. So as I said, like I'm taking the marks out of 50. So I entered 45, 46, 47. They are pretty good marks. So obviously the percentage is good. That is 92. And here I'll get grade A. Similarly, if I'll enter some marks like 34, 32, 37. So the percentage is something 68. So it will get grade B. And similarly, if the marks are quite low, like 14, 24 and 12, so it's 33%, it's grade D. Alright, so on that particular basis you can actually calculate the things and can pass the conditions using the if statement. Apart from that, you can use any operator which we have covered earlier, which are returning a boolean value. So this is a very basic implementation of if statement.
In this video of JavaScript, we are going to start the iteration statements, normally called as loops. In the basic programming, it is a very obvious situation, like we come across a thing where we need to execute some set of statements continuously multiple times, probably with the different values. For example, if I want to find the even numbers from 1 to 100, what I need to do is I will have to write the code for checking the even or odd again and again. But rather than writing the same code again and again, I can put this particular code inside a loop which will provide various values, means different values from 1 to 100 continuously. And inside the loop, we will check the condition. If the number is even, we will print that. So such things can be done by the iteration statements, as this is a statement which allows the execution of a particular set of block code multiple times or several times. Whenever you will write a loop, you will have to pass a condition, so that until and unless that particular condition is true, the loop will keep on executing, and as soon as it is false, the loop will get terminated. For example, as I said, I want to find all the even numbers from 1 to 100. So it is a condition like the number or the value of I of whichever variable I am using, that should be less than or equal to 100. As soon as the value will exceed from the 100, the loop must get terminated. So this is what it's written here, keeps on executing until a given condition is true. So whenever you will start writing these control statements, whether it is the conditional statements or iterational statements, logically as per your requirement, you can make them nested to any level. Here is the basic idea how the iteration statements or loop get executed. So here, this is the control flow. There must be a condition. If the condition is true, then we will execute the conditional code and the control will again come to this condition. So unless and until this condition is returning true, this loop will keep on executing. As soon as the condition is false, it will get terminated. If there is any logical error, you may write an infinite loop which will not be able to come out of this iteration. Logically, you can classify the loops in three different types, that is for, while and do while, which we will be discussing in our later videos practically as well. But all these loops would be having the similar thing which we discussed right now, that it will allow the set of statements to get executed iteratively multiple times. So in our next video onwards, we'll start with the implementation of them. Now let's get started with the for loop. As in the previous videos, we have already discussed the basic functionality and the basic feature of the iterational statements, that is, it will keep on executing unless and until a given condition is true. So the same feature will be followed by the for loop as well. But what's the speciality? The speciality is for loop should be used when the number of iterations are known. For example, if I want to find the even numbers from 1 to 100, I know that I need to execute the loop from 1 to 100. In this particular case, I can go for this for loop. But whatever I am saying here is just the ideal things. But if you know how to play with the loops, and that will come with the practice of course, you can replace any loop with any other loop anytime in your programming. Alright, so let's first get through with this for loop. As here you can see the syntax of it. Inside this for, you can see it is being classified into three different parts. That is, first is the initialization, second is the condition, and third one is the increment. So whenever you will begin this particular loop, as I said, the number of iterations should be known. So here I will initialize the value. Let's say I will initialize the variable I with 1. That is the initial thing. Condition means the finishing point, when you want your loop to be terminated. That condition will come here. So here I will write something like I is less than or equal to 100, means that is the condition. Unless and until the I value is less than or equal to 100, it will keep on executing. And increment, since I is 1 and it needs to go till 100, I need to keep on incrementing the value. I have to increase the value every time I am running this loop. So for that, it is increment. You can also take it in a reverse way, like I started with 100, I need to drag it till 0 or 1, and for that I will decrease the value. So it's all conditional as per your requirement, and inside this you will write the code. So this is how you can write a for loop. Now how it will execute. First of all, the initialization thing will execute. It will initialize a particular variable with any particular given value. Before entering to the body of the for loop, it will check the condition. If the condition is true, only then this code block will get executed. If the condition is false in the very first time, it will not execute at all. Alright, so the condition, if it is true, then the code block will execute, and then its increment. Increment means after executing the complete body, it will again go to this particular section where the increment will be taking place. Now after increment, again Before entering into the body, it will check the conditions. All right, so this thing will keep on executing unless and until the condition is true, and as soon as it is false, the code will get terminated or the loop will get terminated. All right, so let's execute this particular loop practically.
So in this implementation, you can see I have written a for loop in which there are three parts as I discussed earlier. Here it's the initialization part in which I am initializing the value of I with 1. After that, it's a condition, means I want this loop should keep on executing itself unless and until this condition is true. So unless and until the value of I is either lesser or equal to 10, I want this loop to be executed. And how the value of I will reach from 1 to 10? I'll have to make the incrementation, and so for that, here is the I++. This plus operator will be increasing the value of I every time with 1. So what will happen basically, at the very first time when the control will come in this loop, this will be initialized with 1, and then the value of I will be compared with this condition. If this condition is satisfied, only then the control will come inside the loop body and these set of statements will get executed, where I am just printing the value of I along with the breaking the line. Once all the statement of this loop body will execute, then the control will go to the increment part and it will increase the value of I with 1, means the 1 will become 2, and again before entering the loop we will check the condition, and this process will keep on going unless and until there is a condition satisfaction. As soon as the condition will be false, this loop will get terminated. So let's see the output of this program. As here you can see, I is equal to 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So as I said in the description as well, like we will use this for loop when we know like the condition, the number of executions are known. So here I am starting it from 1, I am taking it till 10. So it's obviously sure like I want this loop to execute from 1 to 10. If I want to make the increment more than 1, like I++ is just an increment statement, you can use any increment statement what you want. So here what I'll do is I say I plus equals to 2. That means here I'm incrementing the value of I with 2. So now when I will refresh it, you see I is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 and so on. Now let's take one more example, like I want all the even numbers from 1 to 100 and I want the sum of all those even numbers. So what I'll do is I starts with 1, I is executing till I is less than or equal to 100. I will just make an increment by 1 only, so I++. And now inside, since this is the statement, you can actually use any statement inside this. So I will inject the if statement inside and I'll say I mod 2 is equal to 0. If the modulus of value of I with 2 will be 0, modulus means the remainder. So if you will divide any number with 2 and the remainder is 0, I will say that is the even number. So what I'll do is I'll simply put these statements inside the if statement. Alright, so I'll just pass the delimiters like that. Alright, okay, so it will print all the even numbers, something like this, like here you can see 2, 4, 6, 8 and so on. Now if you want to add all those numbers, so for that what I'm doing is I'm just taking one more variable for summing them up and I will initialize them all with 0. So what will happen here, whenever any prime number, any even number will be there, so I'll simply say sum is equal to sum plus I. That means whatever value is there in the I will add them up in the current value of sum and then I will update the new value of sum as well. For example, sum is 0. Now if I is coming inside this for the first time, the value of I would be 2. So the current value of sum is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. So that 2 will be assigned to the sum. The value of sum also becomes 2. Now the next time when the control will come inside this condition, the value of I would be 4. So what will happen? Here it will do current value of sum is 2 and I is 4. 2 plus 4 is 6, and now the value of sum will become 6. So likewise it will keep on executing till the value is of this I is 100. Now outside this loop, what I can do, I can simply print the value of sum with the message like total and then concatenate. And before executing, let's remove this line break also. So now let's see the output, and here you can see it's 2550. That's the sum of all the even numbers from 1 to 100. Similarly, we can also find the factorials like that. So let me take a number for that. For example, I will take it num is equal to parse int, and here I'll use the prompt box, enter a number like that. Alright, and now what I'll do, I'll just start the execution from 1 till that particular number. Alright, and in factorial what we have to do, we have to multiply the numbers. So I'll have to do the product. So I will start the product with 1, because if you will multiply with 0, every number will become a 0. So pass int prompt and then enter a number. So here I am taking a number in this num. So what I'll do is I will start it from 1. You can also start with 2 also, because if you multiply anything with 1, it will remain the same. So it's all up to you. And now I'll just remove this condition, and inside this what I'll do, I'll say product is equal to product into num. Alright, I'll have to pass I here. Alright, because num is the maximum limit. So let's execute this, and here now you will get the correct answer. Like I entered 5 and it is coming 5 into 5 is 120. The factorial of 5 is 120. Like what it is doing, 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. Similarly, if you will do it for 6, it's 720. Alright, so this is how you can plan of using this for loop, in which there will be a variable which will be taking a value from a starting point to the ending point, and every time when I'm using this for loop, I know the exact number of executions.
Now let's get started with the while loop. Since it is also a loop, would be having all the common features like any other loop, but the question is, what is the difference? As in the for loop, we should know the number of iterations. It is not that particular in case of while loop. So basically we will use the while loop when a program is having its own condition and I want to execute a loop until that condition is true. For example, if I want to walk from my office to my home, I don't know how many steps exactly I need to take, but I will keep on walking unless and until I reach my destination, my home. So the similar situation will occur with the while loop also, where the exact number of execution will not be known, but we will execute this loop till a particular condition. For example, if I want to find the 100 prime numbers starting from 1, so I exactly don't know which is the 100th prime number. Alright, so in such situations I can go for the while loop. But as I said earlier in the previous video, if you are very comfortable with the loops, anytime you can replace one loop with the another. It is just the ideal statements I'm talking about. So here's the syntax. Like a while keyword right after a condition which must be returning a boolean, and then a conditional code. So this is how a very simple syntax, alright. You can write this code and how it will execute. Let's see that. So first of all, the condition will be checked. If it is true, code block, and so it will keep on executing. As soon as the condition is false, the loop will get terminated. But it's something more than that. Let's see practically and do that.
Here in the implementation of while loop, I have written a program in which I am counting the digits of a number. So for the number, I am taking the user input using the prompt box, and whatever will come, I'll convert it to the integer using this parse int method. For counting, I have taken a counter variable which is initialized with 0, and here it's a condition like while num is greater than 0. I'm not passing any number of iterations here in this program. So let's see how this program will work like here. So let's say in the user input I entered a 4-digit number like 5432, and obviously the counter is initialized with a 0. Now when this condition will be checked, like 5432 is greater than 0, obviously it is greater than 0, so it will come inside, the control will come inside, and what it will do, it will divide the number with 10. So when you will divide the 5432 with 10, it will become 543.2. Alright, let's pass a comment. Alright, now so 543.2, and actually I don't want to take this decimal number. That's why what I have done, I have used the math.trunc method, which will truncate the number to the lower digit to the 0th decimal places. So it will become 543, and now the increment will be done in the counter. It will become 1 from 0. Now this loop will run again. So 543 is the current value of num, which is still greater than 0. Again it will come inside and will divide with 0, will truncate the decimal part, and then it will become 54. It will become 2. Next time when this condition will be checked, this is still greater than 0, control will come inside, and it will become 5.4, which will truncate it by 5, and the counter is again working fine. Now the next time it will do this particular thing. 5 is divided by 10, so it will become 0.5, and again when it will be truncated, it will become a 0, and the counter will be incremented by 1, and it will become 4. Now when this condition will be checked, so num is having 0 now, so 0 is not greater than 0, so this loop will be terminated, and outside I am printing the value like digits is the value of count, and count is having 4 in this situation. Alright, so let's execute this program and see how the output is looking like. So here let's say I am entering 6-digit number. Alright, so when I will execute it, it's showing 6. Alright, if I enter 4-digit number, it's saying 4. So this is all about the while loop. So as I said in the description also, we don't know how many times a loop is going to execute. This is a loop, and as per the requirement, it is changing the number of cycles. If I'm entering a 6-digit number, the same loop is running for 6 times. If I'll enter a 2-digit number or 1-digit number, it will execute it to that number of time. So this is all about the syntax and the concept of while loop.
Now let's begin with the do while loop. Do while loop is actually having something different than any other loop we have learned. Do while loop basically checks the condition after the loop execution. That means at least the loop will get executed once, and after the one execution it will check the condition. If it is true, it will execute it again, otherwise it will get terminated. So as you can see here, it's do conditional code, and after the conditional code in the while you can add the condition. Alright, and that must be terminated with the semicolon also. Alright, that is mandatory. So here is the code block, and then a condition. If false, it will get terminated. If true, it will keep on executing. So as it is written, do while loop is guaranteed to execute at least one time. Alright, so because the reason is the condition is being checked after first execution. Basically, you can plan working with the do while loop whenever you want to execute the loop on the basis of user interaction. For example, if you're taking some user input, suppose I'm writing a ATM code, a user at least has to enter the PIN number once. If it enters correct, I don't have to ask again. But if it is entering the incorrect PIN number, I will have to ask again. But at least the loop should be executing once. So such loops can be planned using the do while loop. And now let's see practically how can we write a basic code using do while.
So here it's an implementation of a do while loop. As I said earlier, like do while loop will be used when we want to execute a loop as per the user's interaction. So what I want here I'm taking a PIN number from the user, and 3456 I have considered is the correct PIN which I am seeking from the user. So unless and until he will enter this particular PIN, I'll keep on asking the PIN number. But if the number of attempts, the count of number of attempts is greater than 3, then I will not ask it again. Means maximum 3 attempts will be given to the user. If in either of those 3 attempts user entered the correct PIN, I will stop asking him and I will welcome him with the welcome message. If all the 3 attempts he has entered is invalid, then I'll give a message account logged. So for doing that, what I have done here is the actual PIN, a PIN variable in which I'll ask the user input, and the counter. Now inside this do, as here you can see the syntax, after do it's the delimiters. Inside this you can put all the logical code in which I'm asking for the PIN number, and every time I'm asking, I'm incrementing the counter by 1. Now here you can see, unless and until the PIN is not same and the counter is less than 3, means the first time it is 0, then when the first time this loop will execute, the counter will become 1, then 2 and 3. So by the third implementation, here you can see this condition will be false, and here as you can see it's an AND operator. If any one of the condition is false, then this loop will be terminated. So let's see how this output will look like here. So like here I'm saying enter your PIN, let's enter 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, and last time also 1 2 3 4. All the 3 attempts I entered invalid, so I got a message account logged. If I will enter the correct in the third attempt, like let's say 3 4 5 6, it will give a message welcome user, and if in the first attempt only I give the message, it will say welcome user, it will not ask again. So this is how you can work with the do while loop, in which the first time the execution will be there for the show, and as per the user interaction on the first time we will plan like whether we should go for this loop again or not. So this is the very basic implementation of do while loop.
Now we are going to cover few more keywords and statements which may control the execution of a loop. So far we have covered the for, while and do while loop, and in all these 3 loops we have seen like there is a condition, and as soon as the condition is false we terminate the loop. But if apart from that you want to do some manipulations in the execution of a loop, you can go for the loop control statements such as break and continue. You have already seen the usage of break keyword in the switch, where after each case and default we have applied this break keyword in order to terminate the switch statement. Very similarly, we will be using this break keyword to terminate the loops as well, as this is the condition. When this condition is false, the loop will get terminated. But apart from that, if any time during the execution of the loop, if there is a break statement that get executed, it will also terminate the execution of a loop, whether the condition is still true or false. Maybe the break would be having its own condition that you can pass inside the loop. So this break either will terminate the switch statement, which we have already seen, and it can also terminate the loops, now which we'll see in this execution. But before that, let's talk about continue as well. as break terminates the execution of a loop while continue only skips a particular cycle. Means this is the loop which is getting continuously executed, but meanwhile if there is any continuous statement is there, it will skip the execution of all the conditional code of that loop. So let's see practically how can we implement the break and continue statements.
So in this program I have written a for loop which is starting from 1 and will run till 10. So if I'll execute this particular loop, obviously I'll get the numbers printed from 1 to 10. So let's check it out first. So here in the browser I'll open this particular file and you can see, alright, 1 to 10. Let me do the line break as well along with that. So br along with this. Alright, let's refresh. Alright, so this is my desired output, but if I will introduce any loop control statement in that, so obviously the output will be differ. So let's execute that, and here I'll pass a condition like if I is equal to 5, then I'll say break. Alright, so here as I discussed what this break statement will do, it will terminate the loop. So when I will become 5, the loop will be terminated and obviously the execution will be stopped out there itself. So if I'll execute, you see, even though I have written the loop from 1 to 10, but since I have introduced the break statement when I was equal to 5, this particular output is looking like this, means it will just running for 4 times, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So this is about the break, and the similar thing it was doing at the time we introduced this break statement in this switch, where when any of the case was satisfied, the execution was terminated because of this break statement, and none of the case was checked inside that switch again. But if apart from this break I'll introduce a continue statement, so what this will do, it will just skip the cycle, means I am running this loop from 1 to 10. So if I'll say I is equal to 5, then continue, so that means this loop means this particular statement will be skipped when I was equal to 5. So this is how the output will look like. So as you can see, 1 2 3 4 6 7 8 9 10, 5 got skipped. Similarly, if you will add multiple conditions out here like I is equal to 7, so 7 is also skipped. So this is how you can use the break and continue statement in order to control the execution of any loops that we have covered, that is for, while and do while.